Obviously, this isn't the concert review yet, as the concert is going to start at 7:30 p.m. So I want to save this time to get something off of my chest that I've been wanting to really let out for quite some time. 8 Crazy Nights sucks ass, and I could have just stopped from here, but I have to review this film. So let's get started, shall we? This film was directed by Seth Kearsley, and it was released to theaters on November 27th, 2002. It was produced and written by Adam Sandler, Alan Covert, and Brooks Arthur. It was co-produced by Jack Geraputo. It was co-written by Brad Isaacs, and it stars the voice talents of Adam Sandler, Jackie Totona Sandler, Austin Stout, Alison Krauss, Rob Schneider, Kevin Nealon, Norm Crosby, John Lovitz, Dylan and Cole Sprouse, Tyra Banks, Blake Clark, Peter Dante, Ellen Albertini-Doe, Kevin Farley, Larry Friedman, Tom Kenny, and Carl Weathers. Now, a little backstory of how I managed to get myself into this film. I was about 10 years old when I first saw this, and, well, I didn't care too much about it. Now, with my personal tastes relating to Adam Sandler, well, as a comedian, I didn't care too much about him. He can be funny from time to time, but sometimes his style of comedy can be hit and miss at best. And sometimes I kind of have a hard time laughing at the material he has, though at times he can be funny, but those times can be rare. So whenever I think of Adam Sandler, I kind of get really iffy when it comes to his films because sometimes I have to approach them with caution from time to time. And when I first caught this film, I didn't care too much about it. Granted, this did mark Adam Sandler's first foray into animation, and it was a rather interesting attempt at that. And as I grew up, when I reached 13, I cared less about the film until I reached at this point in my time where I watched the film again, well, before making this review, and I found out why a lot of people seem to not care about this film, to the point where they feel like it's one of the worst holiday specials they've ever seen. Well, as I stated before, it is definitely a bad holiday special, and one that I feel like shouldn't be even touched on. But like I said, I'm getting way too ahead of myself, so let's find out what is wrong with this film, starting with the story. Now, it is kind of interesting in terms of premise, but not always in terms of execution. Granted, it did start off with this delinquent of a person named Davy, who is constantly getting in trouble with the law, constantly getting himself into a lot of crap, and, well, he only has a choice between imprisonment or community service. Well, I have to say the premise is interesting, and there are glimpses of how Davy's past was like, but that doesn't really excuse the story for putting in a lot of unnecessary jokes on screen. You know the ones. The crap jokes, the pee jokes, the sex jokes, the breast jokes, and a lot of other jokes that seem tasteless and just unfunny. Not to mention there are some things that can be rather convoluted, and I feel like in terms of the story of 8 Crazy Nights, I feel like it's going through such an identity crisis. At times it wants to be an irreverent comedy. Other times it wants to be a touching slice of life drama. At other times it just wants to pander to the lowest common denominator. I felt like the story in this film is just so confused as hell, riddled to the brim with sophomoric humor and the type of humor that I just don't really seem to care for. So let's just say that I am very unimpressed with the story, and I feel like it could have been polished a lot better. I feel like it could have delved into Davy's past a lot more, and really understood why he is the way he is. Why is he such an asshole these days? But it doesn't really do that much. It does it from time to time, but as it is, the movie is pretty much riddled with a lot of sophomoric jokes and a lot of unfunny moments that just leave me just yelling at the screen every single time. So let's just say that I am very unimpressed, but it did have potential. It just needs to iron out the crap, though. But as it is, I'm unimpressed. I wish the flaws could have been corrected. I wish that everything could have been ironed out. But apparently, it just fell flat on its face. But I will say this about the animation. It's still very good. In fact, it's quite comparable with a lot of great animated films like The Iron Giant and even a lot of the Disney films. It's quite up there with them. But just because any film has great animation doesn't mean that the execution is going to be, well, spectacular. Like I said, the animation is stellar, but at times it's used for shit jokes, it's used for, like, very, very creepy jokes, and at times it just leaves a sour taste in my mouth, especially the crap jokes, and it's like, why would you animate this? Why would you dare animate all of these things? It just makes me feel sick to my stomach. You know, the animation is totally wasted on the very sophomoric stuff that has to offer. So even though it's got impressive animation, the way they use it is like totally questionable. The music, well, at times it can be decent, but at other times it's freaking forgettable. Other musical numbers have potential, but at times they're wasted. But I have to say that the best song by default definitely has to be the scene where Davy enters the Mega Mall and he's encountered by all of these entities, these shopping board entities who tell Davy that he can't run away from his feelings. And I felt like that was the only decent song in the film. There was another song which had the potential to be decent, and that's when Davy and Jennifer were like driving their separate ways and singing about their past. But one thing that ruins the song is Whitey like intercutting and all of these random cutaway jokes just interrupting the song, making it even more obnoxious. So even though there can be decent music from time to time, it's just marred by unmemorability and marred by just a lot of crappy singing from Whitey as well. And some of the songs here are quite unmemorable. But what's a great film without a great set of characters? Unfortunately, if you're looking for good characters, well, you're not going to find a lot of them here. Granted, there can be some characters that are quite okay, but, well, not much is really known about them. We don't even get to spend time more with these characters, but we have to spend it almost with Davy. So, yeah, Davy is very much a mega prick. He is a huge asshole, and I just found myself screaming at him every single time he was on screen. Every time he acted like such a major asshole. Every time he tried to do something either good or horrid, I just found myself really screaming at him every time he was on screen. He is not really a likable character. I don't care for him, and he just seems like a big, genuine douchebag of a character. Whitey is quite annoying. He is very grating as a character. Eleanor is not that bad compared to Whitey, but, well, there's nothing to her other than that she's Whitey's clone, even though she's his twin sister. One thing that can be oddly entertaining, but sometimes makes me scratch my head about Whitey is that every time he gets frightened or surprised or excited, he gets these seizures for some reason. Like, I don't know why. But then we get a couple of decent characters in this film, and those are in the form of Jennifer and her son Benjamin. Now, Jennifer has a very interesting past, especially when it came to her relationship with Davy. I figured that if the movie could have focused Davy's relationship with Jennifer and would have taken away like Whitey and Eleanor, it probably would have made itself to be a very decent film. Because when you think about it, Jennifer is a very fascinating character. She knows who Davy was as a kid and was even childhood friends with him. So you could tell that this woman has had a lot of crap growing up, and even in terms of raising her only son. And going back to Davy, Davy does have a very interesting and very sad past, but just because he has that, does it make me want to like him or even sympathize with him a lot more? Not really. I just kind of wish that he'd be like a better character. I would just wish that he could be a better written character, but he just spends the entire time being such a huge jackass. Not much to redeem about this fellow other than, well, that's it. But going back to Jennifer, she is definitely a very decent character because I figured that the whole thing could have also focused around her as well. Instead, we spend more time with Davy than we spend more with Jennifer. And then we get to her son, Benjamin. Now, Benjamin might seem like the typical misunderstood nice kid who wants to try things out and is quite impressionable. He's just an okay character. There's nothing too great about him. There's nothing too bad about him. He's just good. I just also wish that the film could have also spent time with him and how he's dealing his relationship with Davy, and maybe we probably could have also seen him wanting a dad in his life, or probably wanting his dad back, or having those struggles of having his own mother just raising him. We probably could have had a lot more of that too. And then we get to the other characters, like Mr. Chang. Oh my gosh. This character, when it comes to stereotypical Asian characters, he's pretty much as offensive as you can get. And not to mention, his character design is almost quite similar to that of Ken Jeong, that it's quite scary to think about it. Yeah, let's just say that Mr. Chang is a throwaway character. He does nothing more than just to be the stereotypical Chinese man and nothing more. He's a throwaway character that should have been cut off the screen and nothing would change. And then we have the other characters like Mayor Dewey. Nothing to him other than that he's the dashing gentleman. And then we even have the likes of the store logos. Even though they do appear in the hallucination scenes, they're pretty much the best characters of this film. And they're not even characters in of themselves. They're just store logos. Then we get the judge. Well, he's just the judge. So the characters, for the most part, were all over the map, with Davy being the least likable and even to the point where he's just quite deplorable as a character. Yet the only decent ones I could find right here are just Jennifer and Benjamin. And I think to myself, what a waste. We could have spent a lot more time with these two than with Davy. But the voice acting, it's still okay. I mean, Adam Sandler does Davy well, but I felt so irritated with his voice as Whitey and Eleanor. I just felt like his performance with the both of them was just really grating on my ears. In terms of the deer, I thought he was good in that. I mean, at least he can try out animal noises. Then we have Jackie Totone Sandler, who was also Sandler's fiancée when this film was being made, and now she's been married to him for quite some time. She does a very good job as Jennifer, giving her all her nuances and all of her relatability, but her character is quite wasted. And then we have Austin Stout as Benjamin. He does a very good job with his role, and it seems as though that he was totally okay with his performance. And then we have Rob Schneider as the narrator. Okay, to his credit, he does a pretty good job narrating the whole events of the movie. In fact, his narrating voice seems down to earth, quite charming, and just a lot of fun to listen to. But then when you put in Mr. Chang in the mix, it starts to get so annoying. And, well, for the same guy who has played Cedric from Home Alone 2, the role of Mr. Chang is a step down. But his performance as the narrator was down to earth and surprisingly charming. And then we get all the other actors like Kevin Nealon, Norm Crosby, John Lovitz, who do pretty good jobs with their characters. And not to mention the store logos provided with the voices of the Sprouse twins, Tyra Banks, Blake Clark, Peter Dante, Ellen Albertini, Kevin Farley, Larry Friedman, Tom Kenny, and Carl Weathers. Well, they do pretty good jobs. And special note has to go to Jennifer's singing voice, Alison Krauss, for really putting in some really great pipes in her song. So overall, man, this film is just wasted potential when it comes to holiday films in general. I wouldn't really recommend it to anyone. If you're looking for a good holiday film that has Hanukkah in it, then you might as well just watch the Rugrats Hanukkah special. It's still a lot better than this pile of crap could ever be. In fact, I do realize that Hanukkah specials are quite rare compared to its more Christian counterpart Christmas. And that's pretty sad. So, with that said, I give 8 Crazy Nights a 1 out of 5. Just because it has a few good elements doesn't mean it's going to save this film. In fact, everything else about this film was tripe. And you know what? I have to say this. It may be worse than Grandma got run over by a reindeer, but to its credit, it's not as bad as Home Alone 4 Taking Back the House. It's bad, but it did have a few good elements that could have been incorporated properly. I felt like it had a lot of wasted potential, and I really wished the writers could have just straightened themselves up and then just polished this thing. But as it is, it's very disappointing. Well, that's all for now. Be sure to tune in later, where I finally review that classical concert, which will be shown at the St. Anna's Church. So until then, see you later, everybody.